volgende programma draaien. De Bijbel is namelijk het meest betrouwbare boek dat bestaat. Dat kan ik ook uren over vertellen, want er bestaan geen manuscripten die zo betrouwbaar zijn dan de Bijbel door de eeuwen heen, dus ook tot vandaag aan de dag. En daarom hebben we ook deze site, www.woonbijbel.nl. En al die programma's zijn er ook uit op brinktv.com. U kunt ze elk moment kunt u ze zien. Dus als u deze gezien hebt en de vorige niet, dan kijk je even op brinktv.com. Kunt u ze allemaal weer zien. Maar luister me niet meer naar mij. Ga nu het programma maar kijken. Ik ben ervan overtuigd dat je ervan zult genieten.
Thank you for being with us today. I hope that so far you've had a good time following the discussions with Jay Smith and I. We will continue our conversations in this program. Come and join us.
Now we're coming to a real contentious area, and that is the fact that the Quran, Muslims believe, is universally applicable. It's a book for all time, for all peoples in all places. What do you think about that, just off the top of your head?
It's very hard to apply all of Islamic rules and regulations to life everywhere throughout the world.
What about Surah 4, Ayah 34? This is a lot more contentious. Surah 4, Ayah 34, and I'm just going to paraphrase it off the top of my head. Men are the protectors of women. But to those women who do not obey you, you must admonish them first. That's the first thing you do. Then you must throw them from your bed, secondly, and then you must beat them. Now, stop and think. Does that bother you as a husband?
Yes, it does.
You would say that in the Bible there is reference to the fact that we are the heads of our family.
That's correct.
Ephesians 5 said that man is to his wife as Christ was to the church. In Ephesians 5, it gives a parallel comparing Christ to the church, man to his wife. And what does it say? How should a man treat his wife?
A man should treat his wife the same way that Christ loved the church and gave his life for her protection and cherishing and beauty. That's how we should be towards our wives.
What a beautiful verse. What a beautiful chapter is Ephesians 5. Yet here in Surah 4, Ayah 34, it suggests that you may beat her. Now, I've had debates with Muslims on this. What are you going to do with this verse? I went at Cambridge University and I had Dr. Azam Tamimi sitting next to me. On the other side was Dr. Winters. Both Muslims. Dr. Winter is a convert to Islam. He was head of department there in theology at Cambridge University. Azam Tamimi is head of the Muslim Association in Britain. He's a Hamas supporter. He's a Palestinian, fiery man, passionate man. If you see him on television, he's on all the time. It's amazing, his passion. But they were there on stage with me. The three of us were going and looking at asking this question: is Islam relevant for the 21st century? In front of the Cambridge Union, very liberal, intellectual, academic environment. I turned to them. I said, "Could you both exegete Surah 434 for me? I'd like to know what you're going to do with this verse." Doctor, on the one side was Dr. Winters. English, Don, very cool, collected. He sat there and he said, "Well, I don't really have to do anything with that verse. I don't think it's appropriate for today. I think we need to look at the Quran and we need to keep those verses that are meant for the 7th century in the 7th century and not try to impose them onto the 21st century. It's not something I need to exegete, therefore I don't accept it as applicable for me." Well, Dr. Tamimi was not going to get away with that. He was angry. And he turned to Winters and he started arguing with him. And I just sat back, put my hand behind my head and let them argue. I couldn't think of a better thing to argue on, because you could see right there the problem with Islam today. What are you going to do with these texts that are very disturbing? If this is a universal document, as they claim, here you can see two Muslims arguing amongst themselves over this difficulty of something that could not be universal. You cannot beat your women today. We don't allow that. There's no law in Europe, certainly that I know of, that allows you to beat your women. Yet, this is supposedly a universal text. Tamimi turns towards me finally after he said that. He says, "Listen, don't worry about it. This is the last thing you do. You must first admonish her first. then you throw her from your bed. And I said, look, okay, stop right there. So you do believe there's a sequence here? Yes, there's a sequence. He said, you start with first admonishing, and only if that doesn't work, Mr. Smith, he said, then you go to the next one, which is throwing you from bed. He said, that's pretty serious, isn't it? Because in the 7th century, a woman, basically, she only had 2 responsibilities. She was there to take care of her husband, to feed him, and to bear his children. She was not permitted to leave the home. She did not work outside the home. That was all she was to do. So when you throw her from your bed, you're eradicating one of her primary goals in prison. You're eradicating her identity, aren't you? He said, yes, that's true. So this beating is actually quite a severe thing, isn't it? He says, yes, it is. And then he said a very curious thing to me. In front of everybody there, he said, Mr. Smith, in fact, I know many women that love to be beaten. You don't say this at the Cambridge Union. You do not say this in front of an academic audience here in Britain. I don't think he realized where he was saying it, but wherever he was. Okay, let's go on to the next one. Surah 2, Ayah 282. Surah 2, Ayah 282 says the woman has half the testimony in court. Half the testimony. Wow. Do we allow a woman only to have half the testimony? Yeah, look at the New Testament. What does Jesus do when he resurrects from the dead? Who are the first people?
Women.
Why do you think
women were the first evangelists for Jesus?
Absolutely. Now, to me, stop and think. Jesus was living and working within a Jewish milieu. Were women's testimony considered authoritative in the Jewish context?
No.
Absolutely not. So why
very much like the Islamic
absolutely
culture.
So why did Jesus choose to show himself to women first and not to the men?
Well, I think Jesus is being very radical to give dignity to women.
All right, now we have one more verse to go to. Surah 2, Ayah 223. This is the hardest one for me. It's the hardest one for my wife to read as well. For your women are your tilth, and you may go into your tilth whenever you will or whenever you want. Now, maybe people who are watching this don't know what tilth means. Tilth basically is when you plow your field, you tilth it, you plow your... So women are to be plowed. It has enormous sexual connotations. That means you can go into your wife whenever you want to. She cannot object to it. What does this say to you?
Well, I mean, it's very much, it seems to be objectifying women as just as a thing to satisfy the male sexual... yeah, it's just an object.
But it goes one step further. It's more than property.
Yes.
It's a sexual property. And as many times as I've shown Muslims that verse, you know what they tell me? Mr. Smith, you've written that. That's not in the Quran. I don't know how many Muslims have told me that I'm responsible for that verse. And I say, why would I waste my time writing a book like that? And why in the world would I waste my time writing a verse like that? Because I cannot understand that verse. It is an embarrassment for every Muslim I read. We don't have a verse like that in the New Testament, do we?
No.
Now, you notice I keep on saying New Testament here. Why am I saying New Testament, do you think? Why did I say the Old Testament?
Well, because there are some similarities between the Old Testament laws and cultural context and the Islamic law.
Especially when we get into the next area of universality, and that is peace and violence. And we've got to deal with that. I'll tell you why. Because if you look at the news today, if you open up the newspaper today, there's going to be something on violence there. You're aware of that. I think everybody watching this is aware there is a real problem with violence in Islam. We've got to deal with it. I know it's difficult, but we've got to address it. Let's go back to the Quran again. I'm very careful when I get into this, because when Muslims say this is a universal text, and therefore it's applicable to every place, every people, and every age, and every era, I would want to know what the Quran says for me today. And I would also want to look at my scriptures as well, both Old and New Testament. So let's do that. Let's go through the next 15 minutes. Let's go through and just try to unpack this as much as we can. It's a contentious area, but I think it's important nonetheless. Let me get a Quran here, and let's just look and see what we're talking about. When you look at the Quran, you'll notice that there are 2 sections to it. Now, this is a very small Quran. This is one I use at Speaker's Corner. I keep it small so I can keep it in my pocket. I also want to make sure that it's smaller than my Bible, so people know which one I consider to be more authoritative. But my Quran, as you can see, is very small. This is a pocket Quran, but it is complete. There's 114 surahs there, and I make sure that I have both the Arabic and the English. Why? Because I've heard Muslim after Muslim tell me that I don't read the Quran, that this is not there, and I said, then read the Arabic. For heaven's sakes, I may be misinterpreting it, but at least it's there in the Arabic. And when you basically, this one goes from right to left because it's an Arabic Quran, so it starts on this side, goes this direction, backwards from what we're used to. So if you just take the Quran, rule of thumb, you know this, Asadi, we'll put it in half. And the first 20 surahs are what we call the Medinan surahs, the second half, what we call the Meccan surahs. Explain that so that the crowd knows what you're talking about.
Well, the first 13 years of Muhammad's ministry, he was in Mecca, and the revelations that came in Mecca were the shorter ones, and although they were earlier in his ministry, they were put at the end of the Quran.
So that's this part here.
Yeah, when the Quran was compiled. In the last about 10 years of his life, his ministry, he moved from Mecca to Medina, and the revelations are longer, more elaborate legal issues, and they are put, although they were revealed at the end of, towards the end of his ministry, they are put in the beginning of this.
So that's this part right here. Okay, Medina, Mecca. That's confusing, just turn the Quran upside down, you get it right. Okay, this comes after that, so this is the first part. And when you look at
the
this
reverse chronology.
Yes, there you go. Yeah. When you look at the first part of the Quran, which is the Meccan surahs, there's not a lot there that's really divided. Why do you think?
Well, because when Muhammad was in Mecca, he did not claim. I mean, he was a prophet in the role of a social reformer, talking about the need for the people to take care of the orphans, the widows, for people to believe in the day of judgment, to live a righteous life. And when he was opposed, he didn't retaliate because basically he had no power to retaliate.
He's a minority.
Yes, he was a persecuted minority.
That's right. And so they asked Muslims, where would they stand vis-a-vis radical, moderate, and liberal? Those are the three things. We do the same thing in Christianity.
Yes.
A radical Muslim would be a Muslim that would actually read the Quran, apply it for themselves, and assume that this is their authority. A moderate Muslim would be a Muslim that really probably has not read the Quran. They may know some verses of it, they probably memorized a bit, but they're ambivalent. Most of them that come to this country are here for economic
I think
reasons.
it's very cultural too. When you're born in a Muslim family, just grow up just saying, I'm a Muslim, without having ever read the Quran for yourself sometimes.
Okay, and then the last category would be the liberal Muslims who have read the Quran and rejected it. Now, looking at categories, a radical Muslim are those that really do know the Quran. And my radical Muslim friends here in Britain, and there's lots of them here. In fact, we now know, according to the latest statistics, maybe as many as 40% of Muslims in this country.
40%.
Really risen. In 2001, it was only 15%. It's now risen up to 40%. This is in 2006. They would say that these two different halves of the Quran also reflect two different periods in what's happening in the world today. And they would say that Britain is in the Meccan state right now, so they're minorities here. And as minorities, they must adhere to what the Meccan surahs say. So therefore, as minorities, they look at three periods of da'wah. Da'wah would be to invite, is the word that is used. And they would say that as a result, they must use only that which Muhammad used when he was in Mecca. He used a sword then. He used basically his mouth and his revelations and his teachings, and that's what they are to do today. They call it the pen state.
So as long as you don't have the power to fight against your enemies and you're a small minority, you need to be quiet and tolerant.
So quiet and tolerance, and try to push and try to create an Islamic ambience as best you can. And that's what they're doing in Britain today. This is the Meccan period. We're still in that. But then he moved in 622, as you say, the Hijrah, and moved up to Medina. And for the first 2 years, there was what we call the early Medinan period, where he did not have power yet, but he was trying to create that relationship with the Jews. You know, for 2 years, the Qibla was changed to Jerusalem from Mecca, and that relationship was really trying to be engendered. And that's where you get Surah 2, Ayah 256, where there is no compulsion in religion. That's one of the great peace verses that's found in the Quran.
And Muslims, one of the most popular verses of the Quran.
Absolutely.
By Muslims who want to say this is all a very peaceful, tolerant thing.
They always quote that verse. And that was revealed during that period, according to what the Tafsir tells us. So that was when he was trying to make that relationship with the Jews. You can see why that verse would have been revealed, or why he would have chosen to have it at that time. The problem is, you've got a difficulty, don't you? Because what is the most authoritative part of the Quran?
The latter part of it.
This part. The beginning is the most. Why is it the most authoritative?
I mean, there is this principle in Islam called the principle of abrogation. Okay. That the later verses cancel or annul the earlier verses.
In Surah 2, Ayah 106, in Surah 16, Ayah 101, that's where you find this law of abrogation. So in Surah 2, 106, it says, that which we give mansuk, we give some...